What's happening, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the Hail to the Red Zone podcast, brought to you by LegacyMaker Sports Network. I'm Drew Willingham, here to bring you the latest news for the Washington Redskins. Now, in the first episode, we're going to kind of dive back into last season in 2019, talk about the ups and the downs. There was a lot more downs than ups, but there is some positive light at the end of the tunnel for this team. Talk about the staff changes that they've made from front office to coaching. What we may see going forward as the NFL draft is approaching. We've got the Super Bowl this Sunday, and after that it starts the domino effect of free agency, NFL draft, trading, all sorts of different things that are going to be going on in this offseason, not just for the Redskins, but for the entire league, and we'll talk about how that could impact this team. Now let's dive back into the 2019 season. The Redskins finished with a 3-13 overall record, which was the worst record since 2013 when they also finished 3-13 under the head coaching of Mike Shanahan. It was the 9th season that the Redskins finished with 10 or more losses since Dan Snyder purchased the team back in 1999. Now, as far as statistically goes, they finished with a negative 169 point differential, which is the third worst in team history since 1961 when they went 1-12-1. Back then they played 14 games a season. It wasn't until much later when they actually moved it up to 16 games in a season. So 58 years ago was the last time the Redskins were this bad as far as point spread goes. And, you know, they've got a talented team overall. They've got talent on offense and defense. Just the culture, when you don't have, it just goes to show, when you don't have a good culture in the locker room, even the best players won't even succeed unless you have good leadership there. Now let's break down some of the individual stats for last year for the 2019 Redskins. We'll start off with the passing game. Case Keenum started the year. That's when they went 0-5, but they also had bad coaching and all that stuff that led to them going 0-5. But overall for last year, Keenum went 160 out of 247 attempts for 1,707 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Not terrible when you think about the fact that he didn't play that much throughout the course of the year after Haskins was inserted. Had a 91.3 quarterback rating, so that's really not that bad when you break it down to how little time he played. But Dwayne Haskins was taken in the first round of the draft last year, and because there was so much hype around Dwayne Haskins playing college football at Ohio State, having 50 touchdowns that year when he coming into the draft, you kind of have to insert him when the team is playing as bad as they were in 2019 as a whole, and see what you've got with that overall pick. Do you need to trade him in the offseason is what you're thinking during 2019? Do you get him better coaching? Let him ride the bench another year, and then you've got so many different things you have to think about when it comes to taking somebody in the first round, especially a quarterback. So do I blame them for putting him in? No, not whatsoever. Terry McLaurin, the rookie out of Ohio State, who had 58 receptions for 919 yards, 15.8 average per catch. That is phenomenal for a rookie. And then having 7 touchdowns. And then his longest reception was for 75 yards, which was a touchdown. This guy was an absolute pleasure to watch this season. The highlight of this team this year. We do have a couple other ones to talk about on the defensive side, but overall, this guy was the main highlight for this team this year. And it was just great to see that we've actually got a receiver in Washington now. Give that offensive line the block for the quarterback, then it's going to make a big difference going over the course of the next couple of years. Landon Collins led the defense with 117 combined tackles, 78 total. He had 39 assists and had 1 sack and also accruing 2 fumbles. He was a very, very big pickup from the New York Giants. Well, we signed him in free agency, but still a very big free agency pickup, if not one of the biggest that the Redskins have had in a very, very long time. And they're not known for picking up really great free agent players. They're known for picking up players on free agency who are a little bit past their prime, if not still in their prime, but towards the tail end of it. They're known for picking up the older players. Landon Collins, still a very young player, can still give this team a spark on the defensive side for years to come. Very excited to see what he can produce over the course of the next couple of years. Cole Holcomb, the linebacker out of North Carolina, who had 105 combined tackles, 74 total, 31 assists, 1 sack, and had 3 fumbles. That is great for a rookie. And when we talk about the top rookie list and some of the Redskins who are in there, he's definitely in there, and we'll cover that here soon with where he fell into that list. A very, very great year for Cole Holcomb. I know he's definitely proud of himself. And if the Redskins get a couple more pieces on that defensive side, maybe some help at cornerback over the course of this offseason, they can be a nasty defense again. And back in the 2000s when they made their playoff pushes, those 2 years with Joe Gibbs, the defense was what got them there. And I have a feeling that if they actually get there within the next couple of years, it's going to be mainly defensive driven. And Ron Rivera is a defensive driven coach. Now, after a disappointing 2019 season, you kind of have to make some big changes along the staff, starting from the head coach all the way on down. And they let go of Bill Callahan, who was the interim head coach who took over for Jay Gruden when he was let go after the 0-5 start. And they brought in Ron Rivera, who was the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. He's entering his 24th season as a coach in the NFL, not head coach, but just coaching in general. Had been the head coach of the Carolina Panthers from 2011 until his early exit in December when they lost to the Redskins, ironically. And, the Redskins liked what they saw over the time period that Rivera was there as far as the coaches who were available to pick up. Ron Rivera was your best, not only with overall record, but someone who can change the culture within the team's locker room and beyond to help this team get to where they need to. He comes in with an overall record of 76, 63, and 1 as a head coach since 2011, but he's only 29 and 31 since winning the NFC Championship in 2015. He played 9 seasons in the NFL, all with the Chicago Bears, and was part of their 1985 Super Bowl winning team. So he does know how to taste victory and got very close in 2015 with the Carolina Panthers. But going back with that, he had Cam Newton, who's been injury prone over the past few years. That does make a big difference when you're shuffling around different quarterbacks to just try to get through the aches and pains of what's going on within your offense right there. He's a mainly defensive driven coach. I think if he would have had a little bit more help as far as coaching on the offensive side of the ball, they might have been a little more successful. But he's only 29 and 31, like I previously mentioned, in the past years from 2016 leading through the 2019 season. So that was why he was booted out. And plus, the Carolina Panthers got a new owner over the past couple of years with the whole Jerry Richardson thing. He wasn't hired by this new owner, and I think David Tepper, the owner of the Carolina Panthers, wanted to bring in somebody that was his guy, that he wasn't hired from somebody else, that he can take a lot of pride in bringing this guy and seeing what kind of success that they can have together. Rivera is now the 30th head coach in the history of the Washington Redskins. He is the 7th hired by Daniel Snyder since buying the team in 1999. So Dan Snyder's been through a lot of head coaches over the course of the past 20 years and has not tasted the slightest bit of victory. Only a handful, less than a handful of playoff appearances. Has not gotten past the divisional round in the playoffs. Has won a wild card game, but has not gotten past the divisional side of the playoffs. Ron Rivera, out of those coaches who were available, gives you that upper hand to give you a chance to possibly make the NFC Championship one day. Not this upcoming year. Coming from a 3-13 season, the last time the Redskins had one, and they brought in a new coach, they will only improve to 4-12. I believe that they will improve a little bit better than that over the course of the next season, but we'll talk about that here upcoming in the podcast. And now let's break down the overall staff for the Washington Redskins, starting with the defensive coordinator. They bring in Jack Del Rio, who's a former head coach with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Oakland Raiders. He's bounced around the league, was a former player himself. He never coached with Ron Rivera before. This is the first time they've coached together, but they both have coached for the same team, as Jack Del Rio was a defensive coordinator for Carolina in 2002. On the offensive side of the ball, when it comes to offensive coordinator, they bring in Scott Turner, who was with Carolina from 2018 to 2019 as the quarterbacks coach. This is his first year with Washington altogether, but he is a Ron Rivera hire. There will be a lot of people that I'm going to be mentioning here shortly that are brought in from Ron Rivera just because of the familiarity that they had with each other back in Carolina. When it comes to quarterbacks coach, they bring in Ken Zampese. It's his first year with Rivera and first year in Washington altogether. He has 21 years experience in the league of coaching altogether. As far as wide receivers coach goes, they bring in Jim Hostler, who's got 20 years experience in the league. He was with the Panthers last year, so that's another Ron Rivera hire brought into this team. On the defensive side of the ball, for defensive line, they bring in Sam Mills III, who was with the Panthers staff from 2005 to 2019 overall. So to bring somebody who had 15 years with one organization, that's a pretty big move bringing in Sam Mills III. So 15 years experience, all with the Panthers, first with the Redskins. So hopefully that helps out when it comes to the defensive line part of the coaching. A tight end coach, they bring in Pete Honer. He was with the Panthers from 2011 to 2019, so for the entire time that Ron Rivera was there, he was his tight ends coach and now comes to Washington to help him out in another city. Another familiar face for Ron Rivera, John Matsko is the new offensive line coach for the Redskins. He was with the Panthers for 2011 to 2019, so another guy who was there for the entire time of Ron Rivera's tenure in Carolina. And the assistant O-line coach will be Travell Warden, who was with Rivera from 2011 to 2013 as a player. He was a coach for Rivera for 2018 to 2019 in the same position for the Panthers. As far as assistant D-line coach goes, you bring in Jeff Zagonia, who is a former defensive tackle in the NFL who played 17 seasons. He won a Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams in 1999. He was a player on the Panthers for the inaugural 1995 season, and this guy I remember actually trading for in Madden back in the day, like when I was a teenager, when I was playing Madden. Like, I remember trading for Jeff Zagonia to have as one of my defensive tackles. That's how recognizable this guy is. It's his first year with Ron Rivera as a coach or as a player in general, so he has no ties to him. I think Ron Rivera just saw somebody with a lot of experience to help out the defensive line part of the ball, and somebody that you got to bring in to help out with the culture of this team. As far as linebacker coaching goes, the team brings in Steve Russ, who was with the Panthers from 2018 to 2019. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos back in the 90s when John Elway was the quarterback. He won 2 Super Bowls as a linebacker for the Denver Broncos. When it comes to defensive back coaching, the team brings in Chris Harris. It's his first year with Rivera coaching altogether. He played 8 years in the NFL as well. And now to wrap up the staff changes, let's talk about 2 hires that the team made that kind of show a little bit of nepotism. Now, I'm not really berating them or anything, because we see this around the league now. Belichick in New England has got his son in there. The Shanahans back in the day when Mike Shanahan was the coach for the Redskins had his son Kyle Shanahan, who was the offensive coordinator and is now the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, who play in a Super Bowl this Sunday. So it's not always a bad thing, but it does show a little nepotism, and that is with the offensive quality control coach. The team brings in Luke Del Rio, who is the son of Jack Del Rio, who is the defensive coordinator for this team. Luke was a quarterback in college, so a little bit different than his dad, but because of his dad, a big reason why he's now coaching in the NFL for the first time. He hasn't been in the NFL at all until this hire that he's been brought in for the Redskins. And for the defensive quality control coach, the team brings in Vincent Rivera, who spent 2 years in Carolina and is the nephew of Ron Rivera, who is now the head coach of this team. So we'll see how this little bit of dose of nepotism works out for the team. I hope personally that it works out great, but it also comes with some red flags too, and in other parts of the media, not myself, but other parts, may give them a little bit of a hard time for this. That's why I wanted to point this out in this podcast, was those 2 hires that were made, and maybe some flashback that could come from that. And now that we've talked about Ron Rivera and his staff changes that he's made, Let's talk about an early prediction for this team. Now, this is before free agency. This is before the draft. This is before trades. This is if you actually took the 2019 Redskins without any changes. Everybody's healthy starting the year, not including Alex Smith because he probably will be healthy by the 2020 season. If you took everybody who played for the Redskins in 2019 and then you insert Ron Rivera, what my predictions for 2020 would be with the current roster, I believe they can go 6-10. I believe they could get 3 more wins, doubling what they had last year, and be 6-10 for this year. Once they actually have the draft and go through free agency and we see what type of additions they make, that prediction may improve. It may be the same. But I could see them as of right now going 6-10 for this upcoming season. And now to wrap up the 2019 season, let's talk about the 3 standout rookies who actually made the NFL.com's top 25 rookies of the 2019 season. The Redskins had 3 players on that list. Ranking at number 13, wide receiver Terry McLaurin, who was taken in the 3rd round last year. He was the 76th overall pick. He was an excellent route runner who takes the top off of the defense in a hurry. And from what NFL.com said, he should be the focal point of the Redskins' passing attack for the foreseeable future. And I will definitely agree with that. With the previously mentioned stats that we talked about with McLaurin, he is definitely going to be a very big part of this Redskins offense for the years to come. Now coming in at number 15 on that list was Montez Sweat, the edge rusher on the defensive side of the ball, who was picked in the 1st round, 26th overall by the Redskins last year in the draft. And what Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com said, Sweat is a blur off the edge and he improved his hands throughout the season. He will be a Pro Bowl player very soon. And I agree with that. I feel like he's going to be a very big part of this Redskins defense in years to come. And now that they've got those changes on the coaching side of it, he should definitely improve, I would believe, in 2020 and beyond. And then coming in at number 20, Cole Holcomb, the linebacker out of North Carolina who was taken in the 5th round of last year's draft, 173 overall. Daniel Jeremiah said on him, Holcomb was a tackling machine for Washington, consistently showing he has the ability to sift and sort through traffic to find ball carriers, which is definitely a very true statement. I had the privilege of speaking with Cole Holcomb for a minute last year at Redskins training camp in Richmond, Virginia. Let's take a look at how that went down.
How does practice feel out there today? You guys excited to be out there next Thursday against the Browns?
Absolutely. It's kind of crazy. Game's already, I think it's 4 days away now. Mm-hmm. So starting to get ready for it, getting prepared.
Yeah, this year's gone by fast. Getting excited about football. Finally here, the wait is over. So
Absolutely.
So what were your biggest takeaways so far from being in Richmond and being out here on the field?
I would say, I think we got a good team. I'm excited. Got a lot of guys out there showing a lot of good things. So I'm excited to get out there with the guys and go play some games now. Start winning some games, playing other people.
Well, we're excited for you. Appreciate you taking the time to talk
to
us,
man.
As you can see, I was a little nervous in that interview. That was my first interview that I ever conducted with a professional sports figure. And with him being a rookie and actually taking the time to speak with me for a minute or two, that was really great. And to see the production that he had after that, this guy's got high expectations for himself. He's got the drive. He's got grit. He's going to improve as the years go on. And I hope he stays with Washington for all of them because he's going to be a very, very big part of this defense as long as he stays healthy and willing to improve. Next, I want to talk about the number 2 overall pick. Now, in mock drafts, a bunch of mock drafts, they have the Redskins taking Chase Young at number 2. As talented as Chase Young is, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cincinnati Bengals take him at the 1st overall pick. It's not likely because they need a quarterback really bad, but they can also make some trades and bring a decent one in to get through next year until the following draft because there are some pretty good quarterbacks in this draft, but you just can't pass up on Chase Young. Now, if the Bengals do actually pass up on him, the Redskins, I believe, are going to take him at number 2. However, if Young isn't available, let's talk about what they could potentially do. If Young is not available, my biggest question to y'all is, do you trade down and acquire picks, or do you actually go for the next best player? Or do you make a bold move like the Giants did last year and take somebody who wasn't even expected to go that high in the draft, like a Daniel Jones at quarterback? Do you take not necessarily a quarterback, but just somebody that you wouldn't be expected to be taken with the number 2 overall pick? And I've got some thoughts with that. If Chase Young is available for the number 2 overall pick, you got to take him. This defense needs the help. If you had Holcomb and Kerrigan and Sweat and then Chase Young on that defense next year, they're going to be dangerous. They won't carry us to the playoffs, but they'll be a dangerous threat to other offenses who are trying to score, because that's all they really have is an offense to get to the next level as far as a win. The Redskins can stand in their way as far as the defense goes if they get somebody like Chase Young and if he stays healthy. That's the biggest question when it comes to the NFL, is if you can be durable, if he can stay healthy, then yes, he's going to be a threat to any team that takes him, whether it's the Bengals or the Redskins or beyond. But I do not see Chase Young slipping beyond the 2nd overall pick. If he's there, I see the Redskins taking him because they are in dire need to take someone like a Chase Young with that pick. Now, if he's not available, like I said, do you trade down and acquire picks? I feel like that would be the best bet, because you need more than just one piece to this team. If you trade down and acquire, 1st overall picks for next year and the year after that, and some 2nd and 3rd rounders, those are, kind of like how Terry McLaurin helped out this year in the 3rd round. You need some more Terry McLaurin picks, not necessarily for wide receivers, but someone who can make an impact on this team as fast as someone like he did. If the Redskins end up trading down, let's say a scenario, like let's say they trade down with that 2nd overall pick, and part of that is they get a 1st-round pick this year that's like in the 6 to 8 slot, along with, a 2nd and 3rd, or even, including a 1st round for next year or the year after that. If for some reason they slip down to the 6th or 8th pick this year, I think that they've got to make a really, really bold move when it comes to that offensive line. They need help at that tackle position. Trent Williams is not guaranteed to come back next year. There's a very good chance that he will, now that they've made coaching changes. They made medical staff changes, because that was the biggest reason why he wasn't back last year. But now that they're improving the culture and they're improving the medical staff, is a good chance that he'll come back. But even if Trent Williams comes back, he can't do it alone. They need not only help at the left tackle position, because he was out last year, but even the right tackle position. So I feel like if the Redskins were to slip to the 6th or 8th pick and they traded away that 2nd pick because Chase Young wasn't there, you've got to take somebody like a Andrew Thomas out of Georgia, who played left tackle. He has switched around between right tackle and left tackle before. He's primarily a left tackle, but he has played right tackle. So if you get him at the 6th to 8th pick, and you move him over to right tackle and you get a Trent Williams, that's going to beef up your offensive line tremendously, and that's how that team can improve overnight from a 3-13 team to a dangerous possible 8-8 to 9-7 team with an offensive line that's blocking for your quarterback. It can be Dwayne Haskins, it can be anybody at quarterback, and that team will improve if you just get those 2 pieces there right there. You get Trent Williams back next year, and you also get like a very, very talented right tackle. Now, a little bit on Andrew Thomas. He's a 6'5", 320-pounder with excellent technique in the pass protection. He has long arms to keep opposing pass rushers at bay. Georgia, they averaged 5.07 yards per carry and only allowed 12 sacks last season with him a part of that offensive line. If you do not take Chase Young at 2 because he's not there, and you trade down, I'm not saying taking Andrew Thomas with the 2nd overall pick. He's very good, but I don't see that being a big move to be made to the 2nd pick. If Chase Young is gone and you have to trade down because there's obviously nobody there that you are comfortable with at 2, and there are buyers trying to get that 2nd overall pick for somebody else, and you happen to move down between the 6th and 8th spot, you take someone like an Andrew Thomas. That is my opinion on that part of it. Now, as far as making a bold move, like my other question was, to answer that, I don't feel like they should be making a bold move, because taking Andrew Thomas at 2, it wouldn't be a wasted pick, but it would be pretty drastic. You don't need to do something like that. you might even get a chance to, like they did last year where they traded back into the first round. They might be able to trade back into a first round. Thomas may even slip to between 12 and 14, and you might be able to get back in there with the pick from next year, trading back in. And I really think that Ron Rivera is doing his homework right now on this team and looking and seeing how atrocious that this Washington offensive line is. He's got to make some changes. It could be in free agency, but I feel like this draft is going to be very impactful, and it's going to include some offensive line talent. That's what I feel like they're going to do. You know, what I really feel like they're going to do with the second overall pick, I really think they're going to take Chase Young. I don't see him slipping past 2. I don't see, I do see the Bengals taking somebody else like a Joe Burrow or somebody else at quarterback because they really, really need a quarterback. But they also need just as much help as the Redskins do. I wouldn't be surprised if they took Chase Young number 1 overall because he is good enough to go number 1 overall. So if Chase Young's there, the Redskins take him in my opinion. If they don't, if it were me, in my opinion, what I would do, I would trade down, try to get Andrew Thomas, try to get some help on that offensive line because you can find wide receivers and running backs and quarterbacks deeper in the draft. I mean, they proved it with Tom Brady. He's the only one that's really fallen that far and been that successful, but you can get a decent quarterback in the second or third round. I mean, Lamar Jackson was the last overall pick in the first round a few years back, and look at what he's doing now. So that's my take on the second overall pick. I really hope they get Chase Young, but we'll see how that goes. And now that we've talked about the number 2 overall pick, let's dive into the pending free agents for this upcoming season, who should stay, who should go, and even talk about players who have 1 year remaining on their contract coming into the 2020 season, who should possibly restructure, who should possibly be traded, because they're going to be affecting this team going forward, possible veterans and so forth. So for this upcoming 2020 season, once March hits, we've got some free agents who either need to be re-signed or let go. At the top of the list, you got Case Keenum. Case, even though he didn't do too bad, I feel like with Alex Smith coming back, who can help out Dwayne Haskins in his maturity and his production in his game, there's not much room for Case Keenum or even Colt McCoy. Those 2 quarterbacks are pending free agents according to overthecap.com. So I really feel like they should move on from those 2. Case Keenum is a decent quarterback. If he was playing in a place like Minnesota, or not like Minnesota because they have Kirk Cousins, but in a situation like he was when he was in Minnesota, he could still succeed in his league. I still see potential out of Case Keenum, but in Washington, I feel like they need to move on from him. They want to bring Colt McCoy back as a 3rd string quarterback. If he's willing to do that, that's possible. But as far as Case Keenum, he's definitely produced a lot better than Colt McCoy and deserves another chance somewhere else. So I think they should move on from him. Brandon Sheriff did pretty decent on the offensive line side of the ball, but I feel like if they bring him back, they got to bring them back at a contract that's good for the team, good for him, and good for his future. Possibly a 2-year deal. Nothing too big, because we got to see what they can do in this draft and other free agent moves to help beef up this line. He's not one of the answers, like the main answers, like a Trent Williams, but he definitely does have an impact on this offense when healthy and when he's got a group around him that can help it out, because not 1 or 2 guys are going to help this offensive line do what they need to do. They need to have a full offensive line ready as a unit, cohesive, and ready to go. Vernon Davis is another man on this list, a tight end who's been around the league for a long time, got a Super Bowl ring with the Denver Broncos, has not really been that relevant since he left that team, and even wasn't all that relevant, with the Denver Broncos. He was just kind of there to help them get the Super Bowl ring a little bit, but his main days in San Francisco with Alex Smith, those days are over, because he's a shell of himself. He had 1 really good game in 2019, but depending on what his asking price is, even though he's a tight end who can affect this offense when healthy, big key, when healthy. Vernon has had some issues with staying healthy. Maybe bring him back on a 1-year team-friendly contract that doesn't cost you a lot in cap. But depending on if Vernon Davis wants to retire or if he's trying to get money, Washington should not be the place to do it, because even though we do need help at tight end, we need a player or two that's going to be healthy to be there for the entirety of the season. Vernon Davis and Jordan Reed have just not been cutting it over the past few years. Then you've got Sprinkle, who's also a tight end too. We need some dire help on that at that position as far as tight end goes. So I think they should let Vernon go, honestly. Chris Thompson is next on the list, a running back who helps provide depth for the Redskins. However, they have Adrian Peterson. They also have Darius Geis, who has had issues with being healthy. But they've got other running backs like Smallwood and stuff too. They really don't need Thompson. He hasn't really produced as much as he did in previous years. He's kind of taken a drop off in production. So depending on if his contract could be friendly for the team or not, I don't think that he would be a great re-sign for this team. I think they should move on from Chris Thompson. Eric Flowers, offensive lineman, came from New York, had a lot of problems with penalties and so forth over the years, and even had some issues this year with that too. They're desperate enough to re-sign players for the offensive line. Are they desperate enough to bring him and also Donald Penn back? Donald Penn is also on this list. He's right underneath Eric Flowers. Donald Penn was signed to take the place of Trent Williams, but we all know he didn't take the place of it. You can't really take a place of a Trent Williams. That's how good Trent Williams is to this offensive line. Donald Penn, he hung in there, and he was there all season. Is he the answer to be on the other side at the other tackle position? I don't believe so. He's in his mid to late 30s. His time is about over. I think that Donald Penn is either going to retire or possibly sign with another team. I don't see the Redskins bringing him back. Eric Flowers, not quite at retirement age yet. With all the penalties and everything that I just mentioned previously, I don't think it'll be a good move for the team to bring him back. It's a possibility, but we'll see how that goes. With Rivera in charge, there's going to be a lot of changes, and I do not see him bringing back Eric Flowers. I think I see about 7 to 8 of those guys that could potentially come back for this team. But Ron Rivera's going to be making some big moves. And with him and how he coaches, he likes to have a fullback. That's going to be a change this year, too. I believe we're going to see a fullback in there on that offense. And that's going to be definitely a roster spot that's going to have to be made for that guy. So we'll see how that goes. Now, when we talk about free agents, we do need to include the following year, 2021, because that could impact this as well, too. Ron Rivera could be making some trades because these were guys that were brought in before he came along. He could be working with the GM to make trades. In 2021, there's some big names that are on this list that are available as far as free agency goes. And you've got names such as Josh Norman, Trent Williams, Ryan Kerrigan, Quentin Dunbar, Jonathan Allen, the kicker Dustin Hopkins, Adrian Peterson, who could potentially retire at that point, Reuben Foster, Ryan Anderson, Nick Sundberg, Cody Sensabaugh. I mean, the list goes on. You've got these big names right here who could potentially be traded this upcoming year. In 2020, could be traded with 1 year remaining on their contract for draft picks in this upcoming draft. They could have their contracts restructured. A lot of things could be going on with it. That's why I listed these names, because a lot of these names we might not even see in 2020 because of that. They could be traded. I don't see them being released because they have the 1 year, but one big name that I see them at least doing a restructuring for, because he wants to stay in D.C. and he wants to help this team win. I see the GM or Ron Rivera going to this guy that I'm about to mention and saying, "Hey, you've been productive for this team over the course of the past 10 years. You've been a very big piece to the success that this team has had over the course of that time. We would like you to stay. We know you want to stay, but if we restructure your contract, it'll help give us some more cap room to bring in more guys." And this guy in particular, his production level has gone down over the past couple years. And I'm talking about Ryan Kerrigan. Ryan Kerrigan is under contract for this upcoming season. It's his last season that he's under contract for. He's set to make $11.6 million next season, and as an unrestricted free agent in 2021, 2021. So he could be doing something kind of like Tom Brady in New England, where he's going around, shopping around, has the ability to pick another team over you. If you really want to keep him in Washington and you really want to help your cap room and you provide the information to him in a really good way and say, hey, we want to get you a Super Bowl ring before you retire, or hey, we want to have success, like really good success with this team before you retire, and want you to be a part of the building of that, like the real building, not saying we're going to be building, but actually build towards something great. You've got to talk to this guy and see if you can restructure his contract. Get him somewhere between $6 to $8 million a year, maybe a little less if he's willing to go a little less than that. Somewhere friendly between $6 to $8 million a year. Save anywhere from $5 to $6 million a year potentially, and put that towards something else. If you were able to do that this off season and get yourself up to about $50 million in cap room, that would help you out tremendously to where you can get some really big names into this roster for the upcoming season. So now that we've broken down the Redskins' pending free agents that are currently on the roster, let's actually go over some free agents who are going to be available this year in free agency. And I've broken it down to 5 picks five positions that I feel like the Redskins should improve on during free agency. And I've got about 2 players per position that I feel like that they should go after, or at least try to bring in. Now, they're not going to be able to bring in all of these players, but if they can bring in one of these players per position, it's going to help out this team tremendously. Now, I've broken it down to where I've got 4 offensive positions and 1 defensive position that I feel like that they should definitely improve on during free agency besides the NFL draft. But if they picked up one of these guys per position, I feel like it would help out. Now let's start with a defensive position. I've got the cornerback position. Is my pick in this one. Josh Norman is just not cutting it on this team. They've got to get away from him, whether it's this year and releasing him, riding it out one more year, and he's a free agent after this season, or just or trading him somehow. They've got to get from underneath of that contract. It's crippling this team and this defense. If they're able to go after a Byron Jones of the Cowboys or Chris Harris Jr. from the Broncos, they're both free agents this year. If they can get in a team-friendly contract to help this team out and help the cap space, I feel like they should go after one of them. If not, they can't go after both, but they should definitely go after one. Now, with those 4 positions for the offense, I've got it broken down to a tackle position, a guard position, 1 wide receiver to help complement Terry McLaurin on the wide receiver part, and also a tight end. They are in a dire need of tight end with the Jordan Reed concussion issues, as well as they just need a secondary tight end altogether. Whether they keep one of the ones that they've got on the current roster right now and get one of these guys that I'm about to mention, or just draft them, or whoever, they've got to get some help with tight ends. So let's start with the guard position. If they let go of Brandon Sheriff, who is a pending free agent, but they have a chance to re-sign him, if they let go of Brandon Sheriff, you've got to bring in a guard. Just no ifs, ands, or buts. You've got Joe Thuney, who's a guard for the Patriots, who's a free agent. You've also got Graham Glasgow, who is a free agent from the Lions. Both of those guys are in the NFL's top 20 list as far as pending free agents. So I think that they should go after one of them, if not both, to help beef up this offensive line. If you don't make any moves with the wide receiver or the cornerback and you wait till the draft to do that, and you really want to make an impact in free agency, get both of these guys. You're going to help out your offense tremendously. This next one is going to depend on if they actually keep Trent Williams or not, or if they draft Andrew Thomas, like I was talking about, potentially with the not number 2, but if they trade down or whatnot, depending on how those scenarios go, they've got to go after one, if not both of these guys too. Anthony Costanzo, who is a tackle for the Colts, and Jack Conklin, who is a tackle for the Titans. You've got to go after one, or if not both of these guys. Both the guys have the potential to re-sign with their respective teams, especially Conklin with the Titans because of how far they got this year. Costanzo's up in the air because he could stick with the Colts. They got Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback, but depending on the changes that they make this year, he may want to go elsewhere as well. So those are the 2 top guys as tackles that the Redskins should at least try to go after this year in free agency. And finally, with the last two positions that I have on my list for upgrades that the Redskins should make during free agency, I would say for the wide receiver position, I would say that they need to go after either Philip Dorsett, who was previously with the Patriots, or Brashad Perryman of the Buccaneers. Now, Jay Quimby's probably going to kick me. Jay Quimby of the LegacyMaker Sports Network is probably going to kick me for this one because he's probably going to keep Perryman. But at the same time, I really feel like the season he had, even though this was his third NFL team, he had failed on two other NFL teams previously. I feel like that he's finally, figured out this position in the NFL, and if he stays with the Buccaneers, he's got a really good chance of succeeding. Sometimes players go to other teams and they don't succeed as well, but just from watching some highlights of this guy from the past season, I feel like that he would make a pretty good impact and be a pretty decent number 2 or number 3 overall wide receiver for the Redskins if they were able to pick him up. And last but not least, my fifth position that I feel like they should upgrade would be the tight end position. Let's face it, Jordan Reed with these concussion issues, he's just not cutting it. They've got to get out from underneath that contract. They've got to let him go. I don't see him getting back to Jordan Reed form to where he was when he first started in this league. He had a lot of potential. I've really had high hopes for him, but at this point, you've got to get from underneath that contract. You've got to bring in a breath of fresh air at that position because the tight end position is pretty important. You need somebody who can block. You need somebody who can catch. You need somebody who's going to be productive and be there, throughout the season. And I feel like if they try to go after Hunter Henry, who was previously with the Chargers, or Eric Ebron, who was with the Colts, you might not be able to bring in both of those guys because you do need 2 tight ends at least to pick up either one from the free agency this year and one from the draft. You've got to make some big moves at this position. I feel like if they can get one of these guys in here from free agency, it's going to make a pretty big impact on this team. Now that we've talked about the 2019 season, the highlights from that, the rookie standouts, the coaching changes, the staff changes, the pending free agents that the Redskins have, the free agents that they could bid on in this upcoming free agency from other teams, let's conclude this first episode by saying, first of all, thank you for tuning in. And then also, we probably won't have too many episodes out in the near future. Once we actually know what happens in free agency, we'll have another episode there. We'll have another episode before the draft, talking about possible picks with the draft order, including that, and then we'll have one after that to talk about the actual picks that the Redskins have, and then from that point forward, we won't have too many episodes out until we actually get towards training camp, and then the goal is to actually have one episode out per week of the 2020 season to talk about, the recap of each game that was played for that season. So, first of all, I want to also give a congratulations to Kyle Smith, who is the new vice president of the team, replacing Bruce Allen in all the years that we had to endure the tenure of Bruce Allen. Now we have a new regime with Kyle Smith, who is the vice president of player personnel, and Alex Santos, who's the director of pro personnel. Hopefully these changes will definitely make a very good impact on this team. So, in conclusion, again, I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Looking forward to bringing you more episodes. We have concluded now episode 1 of the Hail to the Red Zone podcast. And on behalf of LegacyMaker Sports Network, I'm Drew Willingham. Thank you, as always, for tuning in.
LegacyMaker, the All Sports Network. Brought to you in part by DWillyMedia.com.